This is our monthly video. We do an Ides every month. We started last March, and as you know, next month will be the year anniversary, the Ides of March that we do. We report on the good news that the mainstream media doesn't, and we talk to you about some synchronous dates in history. And hello, Chattanooga. And anyway, I'm gonna list a few dates, and then we'll come back and talk about a couple of them that are really interesting and deserve more attention than the others. But at the beginning of this, I want you all to go.
First thing we want to do, you want to read this? Cause
oh yeah.
We, Yvonne and I both decided that we were also going to do a Bible verse at the beginning of our broadcast, so we haven't done this
Left
before.
Coast, hello.
And
1:30 a.m. Wow, thanks for watching.
I saw Isaiah 60 on a personalized license plate yesterday, and I think God told me to go and look that up and read it. And so I believe that this seems like it's a message from God to the people of Israel, but it's pertinent for us today too. So
East Texas, hello.
I'm just going to read the first verse.
My name's Yvonne. Hey.
Another Yvonne. It's Isaiah 60, verse 1. Arise, shine, for thy light is come, and the glory of the Lord is risen upon thee. And we may check back in on this verse from throughout the broadcast,
but
it's a good one to look
I
at.
love the and kings to the brightness of thy rising. I just love that. I also want to mention the new website, culture.com. You may have heard about it, maybe not, but you can follow them on Twitter at Culture, and it's Culture with 3 T's, and the same thing for the website, and the same thing for Instagram. And I'm writing some stories for them when I can, and it's a great website that is covering the culture of the right, or the MAGA movement, which usually anytime there's anything written about the MAGA movement, it's all negative, and culture is getting the truth out there.
And somebody was crying a little bit today because
oh yeah, Jared.
Somebody was.
I
think Holly might have mentioned it too.
He might have mentioned it. I'm not sure. But yeah, some blue check mark liberal Jared something quote tweeted it and was just aghast that there's a website now that's writing glowing articles, about the MAGA movement, and so obviously we're doing something right.
I think if his tweet had been a little video, it would have been, "How dare you!"
Yeah. So if nothing else, you could just trigger the left and the blue checkmark liberals by joining and retweeting anything culture, because I just have a good feeling about it. I think it's going to be something big and new and wonderful.
So we're going to get into some dates, because we always do this day in history on our Ides. And what we're trying to do also with our broadcast is just to steer you guys towards other info out there and just cover some things that you will never see covered, because we're both curious, and I think that most of our media is most incurious or uncurious,
right.
however you'd say it. And so we're very curious, and as the media keeps getting blown up more and more week by week, day by day, going back since Donald Trump came down the escalator, we're more curious than we ever were, because we're seeing that we didn't know how bad things were, even though we were, especially myself, we were very cynical. So we'll mention a couple of quick birthdays. And so what we do is we steer you towards people. We steer you towards stories and characters in history. Exactly. Freedom now.
Yeah.
So we have a couple of birthdays to recognize today. One of them is Da Nang Dick. I think it was 1946.
Stolen valor.
And there's too much stolen valor going on these days too. And then there's Robert Malthus, and you might want to Google Malthusian theory. He talks about Earth's population running out of resources, and I think you could probably group this guy in with people like Margaret Sanger and stuff.
Yeah,
So
not
Google her too, and don't just look at the nice little bios from Planned Parenthood.
Yeah.
So we have some dates. We're going to go into some of them in further detail. In 1633, Galileo is brought before the Roman Inquisition.
Yep.
Galileo believed that the Earth revolved around the sun, and that was bad news. Can't do that. Yes, we do, Kirk. 1689 was a Bill of Rights before our Bill of Rights in England. English Parliament kind of reined in their king and queen at the time, and this was kind of like the start of the constitutional monarchy in Britain. In 1861, on this date, Abraham Lincoln was officially declared president. All right, Daniel. 1917, and we've mentioned her before in a couple of episode a couple times before, Mata Hari, and we bring her up again because this was the date that I think she was executed in 1917 on this date, and she was accused of being a spy, much like Maria Butina has been accused of being a Russian spy, even though most of the gravest charges have been dismissed or dropped, and
Not to mention, you've got how she's being treated as compared to people like Jacob Schwartz, child porn dude who's still on the loose, and then Jeffrey Epstein, free to rape children, and don't believe they were ever in solitary confinement.
No, or their homes raided.
They saved that, huh?
And Google Maria Butina, the spy who wasn't. You guys take a look at that story.
Yeah, and with Mata Hari, there's a lot of information coming out now that it's, that whole story might not have been told the way that it was, and with fake news and how it is, I'm sure that.
Hey, first day trolling anybody?
Yeah.
Because that's a tired line.
I know it.
So 2007, this is when Romney declared for president, and he's still not president. That was 12 years ago.
We can be grateful for
now,
that.
2 years ago, Michael Flynn resigned as National Security Advisor to President Trump. Big travesty here, and we're going to get into that more later also. Also, on the same date, Kim Jong-nam, who is the older brother of Kim Jong-un, was assassinated in, I want to say Singapore, somewhere east. This was 2 years. It was on the same date that Michael Flynn resigned.
Right.
And then for dates, go back to 2011. I want you guys to pay attention to Ukraine. Ukraine is actually the stuff that has what's a big part of what's got Manafort in trouble with the special counsel.
Right.
Those are quotes, by the way. Quote tweets or whatever.
Right.
So there's still stuff happening in Ukraine. And Yulia Tymoshenko was arrested in 2011. You want to Google her and read about her story. She was a prime minister before, but now this year she's going to be running for president in Ukraine.
Right.
And I'm not the big expert on Yulia, but I've kind of seen her off and on in stories dating back into the early 2000s. And she's somebody to watch and just pay attention to Ukraine. Look that stuff up.
Definitely.
So now what we want to do is we want to go into Galileo in some more detail because this is synchronous.
Oh, yeah.
For sure, with what's going on today.
Right. Okay, so the Galileo Affair was a sequence of events beginning around 1610, culminating with the trial and condemnation of Galileo by the Roman Catholic Church Inquisition in 1633 for his support of heliocentrism, which is the idea that the Earth revolves around the sun and not the reverse.
Not the other way around.
And the Inquisition declared heliocentrism to be formally heretical, and you can relate that to today's climate with how the left and some on the right treat today's.
Well, with the new religion, today is climate change, and
today's climate skeptics are yesterday's heretics.
And then the Roman Inquisition.
And the Roman Inquisition, it was called the Supreme Sacred Congregation of the Roman and Universal Inquisition. In today's terms, that would be, the New Green Deal.
Yeah, New Green Deal.
And anybody who doesn't buy into it is a heretic. And he was eventually tried and convicted, and they convicted him of, what was it, the vehemently suspect of heresy. They sentenced him to indefinite imprisonment, and he spent, I think, the rest of his life, which was like 6 or 7 more years, under house arrest until his death in 1642. But we kind of have our own Inquisition going on now, and the Catholic Church has been replaced by the Church of Environmentalism, or SJWs, or the left, and they're conducting their own Inquisition. And if you get in their crosshairs, you're going to be taken down, socially shamed. They were I don't want to. The Inquisitions that were one singular ongoing phenomenon which drove the witch hunt to its peak. And I thought that the term witch hunt was interesting because...
very apt for today.
Yeah, and also what was happening with the Inquisitions was kind of laying the precursor to like the Salem witch trials and the witch...
And actually, what this goes on, when you research this more, you see that there were hundreds of thousands, maybe millions that were executed for this heresy. And the Salem, we all talk, everybody knows about, or has heard about Salem witch trials, but those trials were going on all over the world as well. We talked about that in a previous episode, and we talked about Sweden, and about how there was a boy that was, they were two boys at the opening of the church, and they were in charge of going, oh, I can see on their forehead that they are witches.
Right.
And one of them accidentally called out the wife of one of the preachers, the priests. And it was like, oh no, wait, my bad, you're not a witch.
And that was when it had gone too far.
And that's when it had gone too far. But people were being beheaded and stuff. But believing that the earth revolved around the sun got a lot more people killed back in the day.
Right.
Than being a witch did. Hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, and the thing about that is these Inquisitions laid the groundwork for these witch hunts, and we kind of have the same thing going on now. And if you don't think that the left wants you nowhere good, because you look at what's happening in Europe with Tommy Robinson, or I read something the other day about where they arrested, was it a teacher?
Oh, they arrested a mother.
A mother who had tweeted or something about...
Tweeted a transgender person was a man and not what they were saying they were.
She was arrested.
She was arrested and put in jail.
She was arrested and put in jail. And so these are dangerous ideas, what's going on then, what is going on now. And so it laid the groundwork for these...
What's up, Matt?
For the Salem witch hunts, but also... what happened then in the 17th century, it laid the groundwork for Nazism, for Soviet Russia, for Japanese internment camps, for a lot of things. So what people don't realize is that the evil, you look at other events in history.
I don't agree with that, ASDF. I'm not looking to arrest people.
Yeah, no, definitely not.
I'm going to help them.
But dangerous ideas left. We kind
left
of
unchecked and left. That people don't push back on this; they just keep going.
It grows.
Too many people are complacent.
Incrementalism, and we can't do that. But I'll finish with this. Galileo had complained that some of the philosophers who opposed his discoveries had refused even to look through a telescope because he was going to show them.
Did not want to see the evidence. And one thing I learned about Galileo is that when he found out that there was Galileo found out about the invention of this telescope. I think it was in the Netherlands. He went there to check it out. He applied himself and became an expert in making his own lenses so he could find the truth he was looking for.
Right.
I mean, he freaking went. He trained himself to be a lens crafter, basically. And he made one to where he could see 20 times the image, which is pretty good in the 1630s.
Yeah, and he wanted to show these people who were accusing him, what his evidence was, and they weren't open to listening to him.
They wouldn't even look.
So, Scott Adams and other people talk a lot about living in a post-fact world. Well, we've actually been living in a post-fact world for quite some time. And so I'm going to finish with this quote. This is directly from Galileo himself. And he says, "My dear Kepler, I wish that we might laugh at the remarkable stupidity of the common herd. What do you have to say about the principal philosophers of this academy who are filled with the stubbornness of an asp and do not want to look at either the planets, the moon, or the telescope, even though I have freely deliberately offered them the opportunity 1,000 times. Truly, just as the asp stops its ears, so do these philosophers shut their eyes to the light of truth.
And
that reminds me of that.
They have the asp, and that's an Egyptian snake.
Yeah.
And now we're talking Garden of Eden, maybe. And so we're looking, you look at what happened to Galileo, it's the seriousness of the charge.
It's not about the evidence, it's about the seriousness of the charge.
And I think that's who said
Look
that?
Look at Rush Limbaugh, I think. He's always...
No, but I mean, he got that from, it was Tom Daschle or somebody.
Oh, is that who he got it? Oh, yeah. I think it was Tom Daschle.
Because it's not about the evidence, it's about the seriousness of the charge, which is what's happening to Donald Trump right now, too.
Right.
It's it's so serious of a charge, we've got to investigate.
Right.
But, back to Eden and the asp and, the snakes, nothing new under the sun.
Yep.
And we wanted to get into...
King Cyrus. And also, okay,
Thank you, Kirk.
I was going to bring up King Cyrus and from the Bible. I couldn't. There's not really any dates that coincide with this, other than the fact. Well, that I have to tell that later. So King Cyrus was a king.
He came up out of Persia. He actually built the first Persian Empire. He served other kings before he got really big.
Also, King Cyrus in the
Big one.
Bible was mentioned like 100 years before his time.
Yeah, the big story of the Bible regarding King Cyrus, he was an emperor. He became emperor, but the Bible mentioned him 100 years or so before he was ruled, and he saw this written about him 100 years before. That the Bible said that King Cyrus would help the Jewish people get back to their homeland
Right.
and rebuild their homeland, their temple. And he said, this must be the true God. I am going to do this. And so he sent the Jewish people back to their homeland. He's the one that broke them out of Babylonian captivity because he defeated the Babylonians.
Right.
And hey, what's up, Jeff? Long time.
And the interesting thing about King Cyrus, and he was mentioned in the Bible by God, 100 years before he became king, is that he wasn't a perfect man. He was a fallen. He was not, which God often does.
We all are. We're all fallen. He
And
uses fallen people to.
I know that a lot of people, some people have compared Trump to King Cyrus, and I see the comparison. He's not a perfect man.
And I'm still looking into a reference that King Cyrus was referred in the Bible as a Messiah, and he's the only one besides Jesus that was referred to that. And I still want to make sure that that's true.
Yeah.
So I haven't. Hey,
Don't
what's
know
up,
about
Trump
that.
Unlimited?
And interesting too about King Cyrus and the comparison to Trump. With Trump moving the embassy of Jerusalem, of Israel,
From Tel Aviv to
Jerusalem, and everybody saying you can't do that, and everybody on the left and right was saying all hell would break loose if he did that, and he's probably one of the most pro-Israel presidents we've ever had.
But at the same time, is that the Mideast hasn't lit up like everybody said it would.
Right, because of this, yeah.
And at the same time, he's now trying to pull out of Syria.
Right.
It's like, how dare you pull out of Syria? Now we've got people on the left wanting to fight wars.
Right.
We've got Donald Trump
Right.
wanting to pull out of wars.
He makes his enemies support things that they used to be against. But the thing about King Cyrus, and the reason I want to talk about this is because as I was researching this, I came upon the Shah of Iran, which we overturned in 1979. But in 1971, he had a huge, massive celebration commemorating the 2500. It was a 2500 year celebration of King Cyrus, and Reza. I don't know how you say his name. Pahlavi. Really
the Shah of
liked
Iran.
The Shah of Iran. Here's the Shah of Iran promoting this King Cyrus, who freed the Jew. He was pro-Jewish. The Shah of Iran, who was trying to modernize things in Iran. He was trying to give women the right to vote.
Yeah.
He was doing all these great things, and then America strangely went in there and helped overturn that dude. But it's interesting when you research King Cyrus that you will, if you Google it, yeah, Jimmy Carter did turn his back.
He did.
you know, it's interesting that, I mean, there's Wikipedia write-ups on this celebration, and of course,
Yeah.
they're not glowing articles. They're going off on the Shah for spending so much. And
Yeah.
when you look at what he did to commemorate it, I highly encourage you to Google it because it's amazing.
And even just Google images of Tehran before
Oh
the
yeah,
fall.
yeah. Looks like
Before
Cuba,
Khomeini took
Cuba
over.
before Fidel. You know, they were doing great.
And note, Yvonne also saw that Khomeini, the Iranian power structure since the revolution, cannot stand. They don't do King Cyrus. Now they do like the Persian Empire. You know, Putin's all about trying to rebuild the Soviet Union, and the Iranians are all about trying to remake the Persian Empire because they tie into that.
Wikipedia is not reliable, but I didn't just take it from Wikipedia.
No.
I saw what they were talking about, and I thought I didn't like what Wikipedia has written, so I went.
I'll bet, Kirk.
I
bet
went
a lot of people did.
I went to other sites to research this celebration who didn't write the negative tank to it, because basically Wikipedia was like calling them out for spending so much money, you know, while everybody's poor. All of the
Oh yeah, he was agreeing. Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, but Khomeini, they don't like Cyrus because they can't like him because he was nice to Jewish people.
Right.
Can't have that. So, but they do. The Iranians do want to rebuild a Persian empire,
Yeah.
and not just the Middle East. They want it all over.
Yeah.
And at the time, the Persian Empire was the biggest empire about the world ever seen.
But what I was looking at when the actual the Khomeini we know and love today of Iran took over, that was the actual date was February 11th, which was a couple of days
That was when
before the Ides, and I thought, okay, that was my.
It's 2
I
days.
can tie
so,
that in. That's just 2 days.
well, we have that leeway because it's our show.
That's right.
So, hey, what's up, Rob?
The Iran would rather be like Xerxes.
Exactly. Trump, he nailed it. Xerxes.
Yeah.
And it's not the Xerxes of 300 either. It's not the
Right.
same thing.
Not Hollywood's.
But I was thinking, you know, we still haven't. We were going to talk about. Does everybody here know about asset forfeiture?
Oh yeah.
And it happens all over the country. It's been happening for decades. Yeah, they do. That's sad. A lot of people use CNN and others such as Gospel too.
Yeah.
But everybody here, a lot of people have heard about asset forfeiture.
No, not foreclosure. It's called civil
Forfeiture.
asset forfeiture, and what it is like here in Tennessee we've got a highway I-40, and they're known for it, notorious, where policemen will sit, you know, supposedly to catch people speeding and drugs and all that. But what will happen? I cannot carry over 10,000 cash.
But
What will happen
they'll
is
take your $8,000 too.
I read a story about someone who was carrying 22,000. They had been saving to buy a car, and they were like coming from Las Vegas. And anyway, make a long story short, they pulled them over for like some kind of traffic, and then they searched them and they found this money. They took this money.
Mark?
So what civil asset forfeiture allows the authorities to do is they can take your money or things.
Whatever property they take,
whatever
your
has
boats, your
a value,
cars.
and you don't have to be convicted of anything. And so what's happened is there's a few people where these stories have come to light, and in that case, after much ado and a lot of money spent on defending yourself, they've been able to get their stuff back. They weren't convicted of anything. And
But how many people don't?
how many people don't have? And sometimes, you know, it might be smaller amounts, like 2,000 or 3,000, where, you know, it's not worth going to court
Because
over.
they will just say that this is used in the facilitation of a crime, and they'll just take it, and they don't
Yeah.
even have to prove you're not guilty of anything.
Right.
And this needs to go. And one thing,
Exactly.
you know, say what you will about Jeff Sessions, and I thought he was horrible on just about everything as being an AG, but he backed asset forfeiture as well.
He did, and I was kind of shocked because the civil asset forfeiture is one of those things that it needs to be done away with, or at least, if nothing else, you can only capture the assets of somebody who's
Only
been
if you're convicted of a crime that is connected to that.
And see, I don't
those
even know if I'm
assets.
okay with that
Even then.
because I'm looking at the corrupt government, and I'm watching Jeffrey Epstein, child rapist, walk free while Paul Manafort or Ross Ulbricht, or however you say his name, are in jail. So I'm not even okay with
Maria
conviction
Bettina,
because
we have people in solitary confinement.
Right.
And they're not
criminals.
hardened criminals. They're not rapists.
Right.
They're not.
So I'm not
child
okay
traffickers.
with them being able to, even if you're convicted, because right now everything is so corrupt that I'd like to see it go away.
Exactly, Daniel. Money-making scheme. So we just convicted. We just convicted the drug lord El Chapo.
Oh, El Chapo, yeah.
I mean, 10 or 11 counts.
I was surprised.
And he
actually.
supposedly has $14 billion. Why hasn't that even been seized?
Yeah.
Because I mean, he's been on trial. I mean, that's a
He's
further,
got billions. That could build the wall.
and that's a larger threshold than just grabbing stuff off the freeway.
Yeah.
I-40 like we do outside of Memphis.
Right.
And hey, Mary Jane. So there's a couple of things we would like to see. Is there's some things that have to go. The Patriot Act and this asset forfeiture. The Patriot Act is not protecting us, and Yvonne has a lot of posts on her blog, Red Pill Sentinel, and I'm going to start posting on that soon as well. But we've researched this. The Mueller's Mafia is what we call it. Hashtag Mueller's Mafia.
Yeah.
And these guys are corrupt through and through. The FBI has never protected us. When you look back on decades.
I mean, one of Mueller's very first cases before he was, federal, he was a U.S. attorney out in not San Francisco, somewhere out in California. And, one of his big...
you're talking about Asimov?
Yeah.
San
One of his
Francisco.
biggest cases was David Asimov. For those of you who don't know, David...
The son of Isaac Asimov, the famous
science
fiction author.
writer. He was found with the biggest stash of child porn, but not just... He didn't just view porn, he produced it. He
had the equipment in his apartment.
And he was just, disseminating it and creating it. And, I mean, it was huge. And so that got taken over by the U.S. attorney. And once it got taken over by Mueller, he got 6 months, but he didn't serve a day in jail, I think, because he got credit for time served. He didn't serve any time.
And time served is only 6 months. It's just like.
And so I want you to think about this. So recently, I'm not too keen on President Trump's criminal justice reform, or the jury's still out for me. But there is a problem in this country when one of the ladies that Kim Kardashian helped bring attention to was that black lady from 80s.
Ways back, yeah.
She served several, I want to say at least 2 decades in prison for a one-time drug offense. And she had a life sentence. And that lady had a life sentence. And David Asimov didn't serve a day in jail.
And this lady petitioned Obama.
Yeah.
And didn't get an answer. But Trump's the racist.
Right.
And then talk about Epstein.
Oh, and then Jeffrey Epstein. I mean, y'all know about Jeffrey Epstein, right?
Epstein's Island.
Jeffrey Epstein was a billionaire who...
Still is a billionaire.
Well, there was 40 different girls, underage girls, in between the ages of 12 and 16 that he would take to, what's that island?
Epstein's Island.
Epstein
I can't
Island.
remember the name of it, but it's his private island.
And that his
Clinton's been
girlfriends...
there over 24 times, Bill Clinton.
Right.
Hillary Clinton's been there at least half a dozen times.
Yeah, he's in tight with the Clintons. That's why Clinton flew on his private airplane. You can all look this up, people. This is it's in the mainstream media.
We don't have any sources or anything. It's out there. It's easy to find.
Right. So Jeffrey Epstein, over 40 girls, and his girlfriend would procure the girls for him. And what ended up happening is they only convicted him on 2. And I don't. It wasn't rape, but it was I don't know. It
child endangerment
pled down,
or something.
And he had a conviction of 18 months. He only served 12 months, and of those 12 months, he had 16-hour-a-day work passes, except for the weekend. So basically,
And where he went to his office in Palm Beach and hung out, and then went back. He basically slept at the prison.
Right. So yeah, on the
And
weekends.
on top of that, at that sheriff's department, there was a policy that convicted child, predators or whatever, they were not allowed work release.
Oh, right, yeah, they weren't allowed to have that, but he got it. He got it. So he got the cush deals, and so I'm looking at what's going on now with whether you like Trump or not, and whether you think the people in his administration, nobody's been convicted on Russian thing. They're all being convicted of lying to the FBI. Well, whether you think Paul Manafort lied to the FBI or not, I don't care. But do you think he deserves to be in solitary confinement for that?
Yeah, and the things he lied about have to do with Ukraine and being a foreign agent,
right?
Unregistered foreign
Information
agent.
that they've had for years and years and years and have
Well,
sat on.
the FBI actually the DOJ passed on it back in the 90s or early 2000s, 10 years ago or so. They passed on this then. It's the association with Trump that gets it going this time around.
Because I think it was in 2012 they had information and they decided not to prosecute. Okay, so now he
But then the
supports
Podesta
Trump.
firm, which was working on the same stuff.
Yeah, Tony Podesta, who was doing the same
John
thing
Podesta's brother.
that Manafort's been charged with.
Doing the exact same stuff, was allowed to pay some fines and
He was allowed-
retroactively sign up as a
Correct.
foreign agent.
Right. He was allowed to do so. Man, things are just so corrupt right now. I just
And then on the theme
can't even
of,
believe it.
that's why I think the Patriot Act needs to go. It's all it is to spy on Americans,
Yeah,
which
and
is not in the Constitution.
if you'll notice with the names of bills, I love how it's almost like they're sticking
Patriot Act.
like they're sticking it to you. The Affordable Care Act,
Yeah.
the NDAA, the National Defense. It could go on and on. If you look at the names of things and just think the opposite, that's what they actually are.
And so get rid of the Patriot Act, and but the FBI, they're protecting us. I'm like,
Oh, here's what
okay.
they're protecting us. So this FISA warrant that they had to go and investigate Trump was based on a fake dossier that they got from opposition research from Fusion GPS, which was paid for by Hillary Clinton. So that kind of legal, they've allowed these corrupt institutions to come after us, shielded by the law. And I'm thinking, perhaps Manafort's only mistake was not working for the government.
And then get out of the politics of it all and get out of the investigations. Talk about FBI failing us with the Boston bombers.
Yeah, those of
And
you who don't know,
with
the
the-
Boston bombers, that Russia called us, first of all, 2 years
Yeah.
ahead of time, warning us about these radicals, because they had gone and visited Chechnya, which Chechnya has some of the most extreme radical Muslims.
The older brother had gone there.
Yeah.
And what's funny
And then
is this
he-
guy was already on the FBI's radar as far as being a possible extremist.
But he was an asset. He was a informant.
But remember, he was able to travel to Chechnya without a passport.
That's because he
and
was an
come
asset.
back into the U.S.
He was an asset. He worked. I mean, the FBI used him.
And then you've got the Pulse nightclub shooting in Orlando.
All right.
Another asset, the father.
Yeah. Father as an FBI
You've got
asset.
you've got the mass. How many people forgot about 58 people killed in Las Vegas a couple of years ago?
Yeah, how many
58 people.
how many of you guys know that Stephen Paddock's girlfriend was an FBI asset?
She was on their payroll.
Yeah, and recently the FBI came out and said, they came out with the report and they can't find a reason. They don't have a motive. They don't know what happened.
And then you've got in Southern California the married couple that shot up the office. They were known. And in
San Bernardino.
San Bernardino, they shot up a bunch of people. Now get this. This is a great twist.
Yes, really.
Apple, core of integrity. They went, well, we're not giving the FBI access to their iPhones because that would be
Yeah, there was a big
unlawful
deal.
search. We can't do that.
This was in the news for like many
And there
months.
was a big fight, and they were gonna
They were going to go to
subpoena.
Congress and force Apple to turn over the contents of this terrorist, this mass shooter. His
Well,
phone.
now fast forward to last week.
Roger Stone.
And Apple turns over
Roger
everything.
Stone's phone, they handed over willingly. Now,
Roger Stone supposedly he lied to the FBI as well. So lying to the FBI gets your iPhone turned over by Apple.
But not mass
murdering a
shooting.
bunch of people does not get
they're
your
going to stand
iPhone.
their ground and go, oh no, that privacy rights matter. And, I hope y'all can see the upside down world that we're living in, because some days I just can't believe it. And it's not.
I hear you, Kirk.
And it's not a right or left
Hey,
thing,
Patty.
and it's not a Democrat or Republican thing, and that's another thing that I would like to encourage people to get out of this mode of thinking of, in our case, if we were Republican,
Republican or
Democrat
Democrat,
bad,
it's not.
Republican good, the left uses that as a tool to divide us. Because I think that most of us agree on things, we just maybe don't agree on how to get there.
Yeah.
But the way things are now, they've demonized your opponents, and we're all children of God. And I don't sit here, and even though I don't like some of the Democrats and the left, their way of thinking, I don't think they're evil. There might be some that are.
There
but
are some, but
there's some evil Republicans too. So,
in some ways, I think some of that is worse because they are masquerading.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of Democrats and leftist people are.
Yeah, I think the Republicans are
blatantly
worse. Because I think
with
they've
their-
lied to. Yeah.
And then and keeping on throwing out Mueller, lifelong Republican, and that's a canard. That's a That's
I mean,
just
he was
trite
found.
because-
Who did he impress? Eric Holder.
Eric Holder.
He's the one that mentioned to Bill Clinton, "Hey, you need to appoint these guys."
Janet Reno, Bill Clinton's AG, had Eric Holder working for her, and Eric Holder found he liked what he saw in James Comey. He liked what he saw in Bob Mueller.
Right.
So this.
And then, so like when you first heard that they were going to appoint Mueller to be the special counsel, what you would hear in mainstream media reports was both sides of the aisle, totally respect them. He's got honor and integrity. You would hear all these fluff pieces written about them. So when you start hearing that, like all of the mainstream media, and then you have like elected officials, and they're all like kind of quoting the same kind of thing. That's kind of like your cue. That's your red flag to go, They're all reporting the same thing. Because Mueller, if you go and read I did